Reg is an interesting case. He's called a robot by all other characters. Indeed, his limbs are seemingly mechanical. His skin is durable enough to withstand all sorts of damage. However, he eats, he produces waste, and he can even bleed. Reg shares certain design motifs with Gaborone and other interference units, yet he's suggested to be from a different creator. And as Voiko says, he appears to be a, quote, true resident, as Irumyuui once said. With the revelations of the most recent manga chapters, that presents an interesting question. Is Reg really a robot? What is Reg? I mean, of course he's a robot. Look at him. This is clearly a mechanical doll. Physically, from the mid-upper arms down to his fingertips, and mid-thighs to his toes, or the lack thereof, his forearms and legs are really thick and made of this matte indigo metal. He can shoot these arms out like a harpoon to grab onto things and travel easier throughout the abyss. He's almost like Bender from Futurama, though I would not trust Bender with the incinerator.
Kill all humans. Kill all humans. Must kill all.
The taste of the extending bits of Reg's arms are even said to be salty rather than metallic, so we don't quite know what they're made of. Are there metals that taste like salt? I don't know. His skin and hair are exceptionally tough. It's only been damaged by a special needle produced by Bondrewd, his claws once he temporarily turns into a blessed Narehate, and Fapta's claws. Even then, he's damaged on his belly button, which I believe is a more sensitive area and would be easier to damage. I'm not quite sure. I tried to look up average skin thickness, how easy it is to cut different areas of the skin, what body parts are easier to damage. The only conclusion I came to is that doctors will sometimes make incisions in the belly button when performing surgery, but that's more to minimize scarring for, certain abdominal surgeries. Riko notes that Reg's skin has an odd texture to it. The sound effects in the anime suggest that it may be soft, rubbery, and pliable. At least, that's how I interpret it. In any case, Riko's comments suggest that it's a distinctly unnatural feeling. She describes his skin as smooth, despite being able to stop a blade. His hair is also notably hard to damage. Riko notes that it can't be burnt. While still a belle at the orphanage, Kyui tells Reg that he's lucky he'll be soon upgraded to a red whistle. Reg laments that at least Kyui will be able to grow up. Reg has not shown any signs of muscle mass growth or aging, and, well, last time I checked, I don't think robots can grow. Reg also has this little headband that's implied to pop into his head at some sort of socket, as seen when Ozen is readjusting it. It's not an accessory, but rather a part of his body. His helmet also seems to interface with him as a unit. Nanachi has voiced suspicion that the glass display on Reg's helmet is a countdown timer of how many times he has left to fire his incinerator. It's theorized that once the timer counts down to 0, Reg's memory is reset, similarly to when he first met Riko. He feeds off of electricity, as seen in the orphanage and in the Edo front. This feeding is implied to simply charge the incinerator, as he doesn't express any need for electrical fuel otherwise. Though, a little tangent here, it's not completely clear if Reg woke up from the incinerator countdown timer, or the initial shock that the orphanage kids caused. Shiggy and Riko suggest turning up the power, while Nat observes Reg opening his eyes. It seems like Reg's eyes were barely open too, and it could be passed off as like his eyelids just fluttering. Nat doesn't say anything to suggest he thinks Reg is waking up. The characters have debated whether Reg's incinerator charges reaching 0 wiped his memory, or if it was the massive charge of energy from the orphanage shock. Maybe the initial shock jump-started him, but the bigger one brought him to full alertness. See, I keep saying I'm going to make this bigger video talking about the major theories of this series, but the list of theories just keeps getting bigger. I need to finish it. It is a huge document. Anyway, Reg is shown to need electricity in some fashion. Riko fed Reg some hot coals to try and revive him, and besides coughing up a puff of smoke, it doesn't seem like it damaged him. Most importantly, Reg is immune to the curse. The curse is said to impact all living creatures, though it manifests differently depending on how human a creature is. Reg is certainly human-shaped, yet he's completely unburdened by the curse. To summarize, here are all the points suggesting Reg is a robot. Reg has mechanical arms and legs. He also has a metal headpiece that pops into some sort of socket. Reg's mechanical arms can shoot out and extend. His skin has an odd, inhuman texture. Reg is very durable and only damaged in special scenarios. Charges are added to Reg's incinerator, an attack that's sent out from a system in the palm of his hand by using electricity. Reg is also immune to the Curse of the Abyss. Seems like a cut and dry case. However, let's humor the Reg is a human side of the debate. Before Reg initially woke up in the orphanage, Rico performed a pretty intrusive medical checkup on him, treating him like an odd test subject rather than respecting his patient rights. It gave her information on his anatomy, though I'm not sure Reg would have agreed to an amateur colonoscopy if Rico had asked. She needs to learn patient consent. Rico's checkup gives her a bit of insight into Reg's biology. She states that he has better vision and hearing than she does. I'm not sure how she figured that out, but there's no reason not to believe her. Nanachi and Reg himself both corroborate Reg's heightened senses. He's shown to have a very sensitive sense of smell. He sniffs around the 4th layer for Nanachi's ingredients, around the 6th layer for Fopta's scent trail, and can possibly detect toxins in food, and he's the team's taste tester because of this. His affinity for fluff could be related to an increased sense of touch. Author Akihito Tsukushi's commentary track on Dawn of the Deep Soul notes that Reg's love of fluffy fur is akin to an infantile trait, according to the translation. The exact quote states, "Reg has infantile traits, and him constantly reacting to Nanachi being fluffy is like a child getting excited without knowing what they're excited about." To me, this reads like a self-soothing instinct. In real life, humans as well as other animals are naturally comforted by touch. Hugs are actually really good for your mental health. Petting an animal is also a form of stress relief. Petting a dog, for example, lowers your cortisol levels and increases oxytocin levels, the latter of which is actually the same hormone that bonds mothers to babies, according to Johns Hopkins Medicine. I'll leave a link in the description of this article that talks about the benefits of petting animals. It's pretty cool. Though Nanachi calls Reg's petting intrusive and perverted, I think that's just because Reg doesn't ask if he can hug Nanachi, and there's this deeper trauma related to Nanachi and being petted by others. That's a different story. Reg isn't being lewd with his petting. Nanachi just has an issue with people invading her personal space. I think Reg also definitely has anxiety problems. This dude is so high-strung. You ruined a perfectly good toaster. You gave him anxiety. Petting his fluffy friends just helps calm him down. Anyway, the point is, Reg seems really comforted by fluffy animals, possibly as a form of stress relief. If he were a robot, then why would he be coded to have anxiety and stress? It seems counterintuitive and would just get in the way of his mission. Reg can bleed. We've seen this a few times, notably when his belly button was pierced. Sure, this could be something that's used to power his mechanical body, or be akin to oil to lubricate his mechanical parts. When Bondrewd cuts off his arm, blood is coming out of this metallic part of his arm, suggesting that this blood flow is part of his mechanical limbs. And a fun fact about this video, while I was writing the initial draft of the video, I was sitting in my biology class and my professor was going through the cardiovascular system, which gave me the question, does Reg have a form of bone marrow tissue? Those produce the red blood cells according to the slide on screen. I want to know how his blood is made. Is it blood? What's it actually composed of? Rico, you need to go into biology. I need to know if Reg has a heart. I mean, he does, but that's like an emotional heart. He's a little sweetheart. He cares for his friends. He has a heart in the literary sense. But I gotta know what this kid's organs are. Anyway, he has some form of a circulatory system. He has some fluid that's coursing through his body and seems to function like blood in a sense. What throws a wrench into this idea is that Reg seemingly doesn't need to breathe, so this blood wouldn't be transporting oxygen. I'm not sure what it would be. Maybe the nutrients that he's eating? Reg also produces waste that's akin to urine, which means something is being filtered through his blood. As we all know, pee is stored in the balls, and if you don't have balls, then the pee just evaporates. Urine is a waste product of blood, so whatever Reg is producing, his body is undergoing homeostasis. He's regulating his body. I don't know about you. I think I'm funny. Part of this regulation involves him eating. Besides the 2 instances of him getting zapped by electricity, Rico also notes that Reg is powered by food. He is said to enjoy mustard steamed buns the most and loves the meals that Rico makes. I want to figure out how to make mustard steamed buns because that sounds delicious. Presumably, he'd also produce solid waste. The unused parts of the food that Reg eats has to go somewhere. He's not gaining any muscle mass, he doesn't seem to gain weight. Rico also stuck a ruler up Reg's butt to see how far his digestive system went, but she couldn't come to any proper conclusion, besides him having an exit hole for waste. Save for the majority of his limbs, Reg also has very human anatomy. There's no beating around the bush, he's got male genitalia, which Rico says are more like a human's. His ding-dong could be attributed as an exit for this liquid waste that's produced from filtering the blood. He also has nipples, which are considered vestigial body parts in males. This trait further suggests that Reg is an organic being. Why would a robot be given these unnecessary parts? His belly button is also curious. A belly button, also known as a navel, is found in all placental mammals, though it is the most prominent in us humans. It's a scar that forms after the umbilical cord detaches from a newborn. Unless Reg's creator was really into the idea of making a robot that's completely anatomically correct, save for the limbs, which is quite strange, he shouldn't have a belly button, unless he's an organic being. This next part will spoil characters and ideas presented in manga-only chapters. When Rico and her crew meet the White Whistle Strajo and her team Hail Hex, a pair of twins are introduced, named Cherumi and Mine. Reg is tasked to help bathe the two, and curiously, they're revealed to be quadruple amputees. Their limbs end with little metal caps that connect to their relic limbs that seem to be related to the Third Works relics, which becomes part of the biology of the user. The Deep Soul commentary also states, the tail is an extension, quote-unquote, of a relic that becomes part of the body when attached. Since Cherumi and Mine's works are removable, and Rico notes that their third works may be a remodeled form, perhaps their works don't connect to their circulatory system, or they close up if they're properly removed. If their works were cut off like how Reg's was, perhaps they would bleed. Cherumi and Mine are noted to be Juso, those who are born as Narahate. They're living creatures that just have prosthetic limbs. When Reg questions Mine on why he and his sister are like this, he begs Reg to not make him remember, and says, "You and your friends will end up like this too." Back up in Orth, Ozan and Jiruo are on a mission to seek out the sole survivor of the curse that's leaking into Orth, which is another quadruple amputee. Something traumatic happened to Cherumi, Mine, and the survivor that required them to have their limbs removed. We don't know quite yet if the twins and the survivor are now immune to the curse, but the stranger in the Wharf district is said to be connected to one of the two pairs of Cherumi and Mine twins. This is confusing. I could go over it in a different video. Maybe when the next chapter comes out, who knows. I believe amputation of all limbs is this sort of last-ditch survival thing to prevent some form of curse from killing Cherumi, Mine, and this stranger. There's gotta be a connection to Reg. There has to be. There are intentional connections being drawn between the twins and Reg, especially in chapter 66. Perhaps Reg's creator, parent, or some other figure in his life had amputated his limbs to save him from death, and gave him mechanical limbs to still be functional. If this is true, Reg would be a cyborg. He'd have prosthetic limbs, but he'd still be human. Going through all the evidence, Reg being a robot, a mechanical doll, an android, what have you, this has a lot of weight behind it. Him being immune to the curse is the biggest piece of evidence. His blood and waste, his need to eat, and his senses, that can all be explained away by the needs of whatever relics compose him. You know, phones need to charge and computers need heat regulation, similar to that. Reg is most likely a robot. However, Reg is still a person. And the first person to realize that is Nanachi. From the very beginning, Reg is treated like a test subject. He's poked and prodded by Riko, whose endless curiosity of the abyss extends to what she thinks is a supreme treasure of the netherworld. His privacy is violated by Habo, who is equally as fascinated by Aubades as Riko is. He's beaten up and battered by Ozin, who sees him as nothing but a mechanical doll whose pain is fake. Reg actually starts to internalize this. He believes he's nothing but a mechanical doll. He's a tool. His pain is fake, therefore he shouldn't be burdened by it. His feelings are fake. He just needs to push through. Just brush off that anxiety and fear and beat up Grandma, you brave little toaster. I actually haven't seen that movie, I just know the title. Fear and pain serve a purpose. Fear alerts us to danger and helps us identify threats. Pain tells us when our body is injured and to stop further injury. Reg's fear and pain are real. The Corpse Sweepers, the Madoka Jacks, and the Crimson Splitjaw, the Orbed Piercer, these are all real threats. Yeah, less so to Reg than to Riko, but if he'd get messed up by them, Riko stands no chance. If Reg is hurt by one of them, Riko will be in worse pain. The worst pain Reg feels, however, is seeing Riko in pain. Riko is Reg's best friend. He loves her and cares for her. She's his Haku. He struggles to hurt her further, even if breaking her arm and cutting it off will cease the spread of poison. Why would a robot be programmed to feel such emotional pain? If Reg didn't panic and hesitate, if he didn't break down as he was faced with Riko's poison, he could have been done with this without a second thought. Emotions can skew one's logic. Fear may assess danger, but it can also cause someone to put themselves in more danger. Scouting out the flat creepers, something's been tracking Reg and Riko. Someone Reg has picked up on, but not properly identified. A fluffy stuffed doll who instructs Reg on how to save Riko's life. Nanachi is a curious case. At one point, Nanachi used to be a regular kid before being experimented upon by Bondrewd. Nanachi's family, prior life, whatever, is almost completely unknown. Even Nanachi's sex and gender are unknown. I personally refer to Nanachi as a girl, as that's the translation I had seen first, and her prototype designs are explicitly female. Any interpretation of Nanachi's gender is valid. Tsukushi said, quote, "The sex of Nanachi is unknown. Let's imagine." I just refer to her as a girl, just to clarify, so with that out of the way. What we know about Nanachi now is in her relationship to being a, quote, fluffy stuffed doll, a test subject of Bondrewd and the caretaker of Midi. Nanachi is kind of touch-averse, especially to Reg. She's treated as a cute little toy rather than a traumatized person. Being touched triggers the trauma response from when the kids in the Edo front used to pet her. Nanachi and Reg are just non-human enough to be treated like curiosities to the humans in their lives. They're test subjects whose boundaries are pushed and their feelings pushed aside. Nanachi sees herself in Reg, I think. To her, Reg isn't a mechanical doll whose fear and pain are fake. He may not be as human as Riko is, but he's feeling real fear over losing Riko, and pain over having to wound her for her own sake, just as Nanachi has been doing with Midi. To Nanachi, Reg is a person, and to Reg, Nanachi is a person. It doesn't matter that Reg is a mechanical relic, or that Nanachi is a fluffy Narahate. At their core, they're both people. Riko also starts to realize that Reg is a person once she recovers from the poison. Yeah, she still teases him as he's helping her bathe, but it's in a sort of middle schooler making dick jokes sort of way, rather than being intrusive about his biology and treating him like a test subject. She doesn't see him as being a doll to be played with or a test subject to be analyzed, but as a kid just like her, he's her equal. There are debates in the fan communities as to what Reg truly is, beyond being mechanical or organic. Reg having the soul of the dog, Reg having Riko's original soul, Reg being the spiritual brother of either Riko or Clawbot, whatever. Yeah, there are pieces of evidence comparing him to a dog, namely him using his nose to track things, and his little paw beans on his feet is so cute. He's got little puppy paws. but I think this debate detracts from Reg's character. Reg is a person with his own autonomy and sense of self, which is constantly intruded upon. He's dehumanized, with the justification being he's just a mechanical doll. Therefore, it's okay to push his boundaries, experiment upon him, stick rulers up his butt, and disregard his feelings. There's a prevailing theme in Made in Abyss about how dehumanization leads to disrespect, intrusive behavior, and cruelty. I've talked about how Idamui went through this, and I could also talk about how Riko, Nanachi, Midi, and Prushka did as well. Reg, I think, is the most persistent example of this dehumanization, though. So, is Reg a robot? Maybe, but that doesn't mean he's not a person. Between this video and my previous one on Idamui, I just can't believe that no one else has picked up on the persistent themes of dehumanization and personhood throughout this series. I could go on to talk about how this theme pertains to Riko, to Nanachi, to Prushka, to any prominent character in Made in Abyss. Outside of fan spaces, though, people blow off this series as something creepy and gross, and for a type of person that I am afraid to even say the name of, lest I place a curse on myself or something. I don't know, I've got brain issues, I'm working it out with my doctor. She thinks it's a good idea that I'm making these videos because she can see that it's helping me heal. Thinking about Reg's character and experiences, it actually helped me process through a traumatic incident in my life. I will spare the details because I am not comfortable divulging that. However, this incident in question involved an invasive medical checkup when I was a teenager. Seeing Reg go through an invasive checkup of his own, even if his was amplified to an insane degree, it actually helped me mull over what happened to me and come to terms with it. I feel an immense comfort when watching Made in Abyss, and I see real people and experiences reflected in this fantastical, outrageous world. Art tends to be a reflection of life, after all, and I find that I understand myself better the more I understand the art that I gravitate towards. Like with the Idamui video, I think the idea of Reg regaining his personhood and relating to Nanachi is sort of like how people can recognize themselves through meeting a new person and relating to their own experiences. It's a common thing. I hope my little jokes in this video didn't detract from the viewing experience. I needed to get a little bit silly in my editing to make up for the depression fest that was the Idamui video. I also find that I've been, tying things from the series to real-life health stuff, and I need to clarify, I am not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. I just find anatomy in the human body to be pretty neat. I hope I'm representing the topics correctly in my videos. I recommend looking further into the sciencey stuff I bring up if you're curious. I am just a student who finds biology to be neat. I am not a professional. I'm not even a health major. I'm an art major. I hope this was an interesting video. I always enjoy talking about this series. Please remember to be respectful in the comments, tell me your thoughts and theories and all that, and I'd like to know what's your stance on what Reg truly is. You think there's anything I missed? So, normal YouTube outro stuff, like and subscribe if you want to see more or whatever you want to do. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.